It's only been open one weekend. Box office. What do you think the box office made in the first weekend?
I'm probably going to say like 110 million.
110. Unfortunately, you are off. And you're off by quite a bit.
How much did it make?
220.5 million.
That's such good news for my box office team. Oh my goodness. That's a good... Yeah, let's go into our scores. I'm ready. Are you?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, we have different categories. We have 6 of them that we use to rate a film, and it helps us take the bias out, helps us be a little more constructive with our criticism, if you will. And the first one starts with story. We believe this to be the most important part of a movie. This is out of 10 points. Andrew, what did you think of the story of Gladiator 2?
In 4 years, he will be 90 years old.
Jesus Christ.
He's 86 years old. And to be making films still, especially at this level, I mean, he just made Napoleon last year, so he's still churning out movies. You know, it's not like once every 5 years kind of deal. So very impressive. And a spectacle of a movie this size, you know how much of an undertaking that is? I wish the world had given Pedro Pascal the attention he deserved earlier. Because he was still doing roles. I think he's in like Buffy the Vampire Slayer episode when he's younger. But he didn't really break out, I would say, until maybe the second Kingsman movie. And
I don't even remember him in that. Welcome to Backseat Directing,
where we talk about movies, TV shows, comics, and more.
We're your hosts,
Andrew
and Aaron.
We put out new episodes every Monday and Thursday.
And on today's episode, we're reviewing Gladiator 2.
3, 2, 1,
action.
What we do in life echoes in eternity.
Sand. Wheat. I feel like you've been waiting for this movie all year long.
Yeah, I picked it from my box office draft when we picked it at the very beginning of the year in January.
Yeah, that's cool.
Deflect.
Yeah. What's the... never mind.
For those that don't know, our box office draft, me and Aaron both picked 5 movies at the beginning of the year to see whose team could make more money. Aaron doesn't want to talk about it.
Sensitive subject this year.
Sensitive subject both years.
Yeah, especially this time of year. I feel like it hurt more last year than it did this year.
You gave up earlier this year, so...
This year, all my movies already have come out for a while now. And yeah, I already know that I'm losing by a lot. We'll go over the final numbers at the beginning of next year.
I can't wait.
I can. Might be sick that week. Might have to call out.
Solo review.
Yeah, I have to call out on that one. But tell me why you were so excited for this movie to come out. Like, what, last year when it was announced, you started getting pretty hyped for it.
Yeah, so Gladiator, the first movie, came out in 2000. So I was too young to appreciate it when it first came out. But I saw it a little bit later in life.
Mm-hmm.
And it is my favorite Ridley Scott movie. I'm not a big Ridley Scott guy personally, which is egregious to some. But I really like Gladiator. And I think it's largely because of the marriage between Ridley Scott and Russell Crowe. And I think just like there's videos with Russell Crowe talking about this. He did a chat with Ridley, and Ridley was like, all right, I want you to imagine you're looking at a bird and thinking about the upcoming battle, and then you watch the bird as it flies away. And then Russell does it, and Ridley's like, we're gonna be special together. Like, and he was right. They made it like a magical film. It's the first Gladiator is special. It's iconic in film history. So many great lines. One of the best swords and sandals movies. And that's why I was excited, because I thought they were bringing a really cool cast back. We've got the same director. Ridley's back. Ridley, obviously, despite the fact that I just said I'm not the hugest Ridley fan, so don't try to tell me I hate him. But, you know, he's made movies like Alien and Blade Runner, the original, some of the most iconic movies in film history across different genres too, like Aliens, like monster horror, Gladiator, sword and sandals, Blade Runner, sci-fi. So he can kind of do it all. So I was excited to see his.
Didn't all 3 of those win Oscars too?
Yeah, Gladiator won Best Picture, and Russell Crowe won Best Actor, and I'm sure the other ones won for different categories. I mean, sci-fi is kind of tough, so Alien might have been snubbed.
No, I think Alien did win. I'm gonna look it up right now. You fill in dead space.
I don't think Alien won Best Picture, but I could definitely see it winning other awards. Like if there's at the time if they had an award for set design, because I think Alien came out in like 1979 or something like that.
Got it right here. Won one Oscar. Let's see what it is.
Sound editing,
IMDb's
something technical.
pulling it up
I bet it's
here.
something technical in nature.
Best effects, visual effects.
Yeah.
Winner. Yeah. So that's pretty incredible to win an Oscar in 3 different movies across different time periods in different genres. Crazy. And he's still making movies. We were just talking about this before we put on, or before we started recording, that it's crazy that like the director and cinematographer for the first film in 2000 is the same for the sequel 24 years later.
How old would you guess Ridley Scott is?
I don't know, 60 something.
I'm gonna phrase it this way because I think it
70-something?
really hits the impact of the age. In 4 years, he will be 90 years old.
Jesus Christ.
He's 86 years old. And to be making films still, especially at this level, I mean, he just made Napoleon last year, so he's still churning out movies. You know, it's not like once every 5 years kind of deal. So very impressive. And a spectacle of a movie this size, you know how much of an undertaking that is? You're in charge of other units, of your ADs, in charge of such a big scope of film.
Most 80, 90-year-olds don't even walk, let alone
Got a
make
considerable amount, don't
Oscar-considered movies.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
And this movie will be considered. This will be a contender. I've already seen early lists drop for contenders for Best Actor and things like that. Paul Mescal's on the list for contention for Best Actor. He's in the top 10. So it will be in contention this award season when it comes around next year. But I think that I was anticipating the movie because I wanted just an awesome action flick that would inspire me to charge into battle like the first Gladiator.
Hell yeah.
How did you feel going in versus give me that like versus how'd you feel going in versus what are your first thoughts coming out?
Yeah, so I'll start from the beginning here. I have a completely different perspective on viewing this movie because I've only seen the first half of Gladiator. Don't kill me. It is what it is, okay? It is what it is. I've only gotten through half of it. And I know everyone loves this movie. It's great. It gets everyone riled up, whatever. So going into this one, I was excited, but I didn't have the big emotional connection that everyone else has, especially for those people who like grew up with the movie. I just watched it, or I tried to watch it last year or this year, so 24 years after the fact. But I was excited with the cast. I thought the trailer looked awesome. I think
Even though they used a modern song, you still thought it looked awesome? That's crazy.
yeah, I'm a modern guy.
That was a ridiculous complaint, by the way, just to clarify. People that were
I
upset.
feel like
with
there's
that.
been a lot of ridiculous complaints about this movie.
complaining
you know?
about
The
Denzel's
animals
accent.
and yeah.
Complaining that he had like a New York accent. Okay. Well, guess what? They also weren't all speaking English because it was Rome in the
Yeah.
year 200.
He said he could speak it all. He could speak all
all tongues.
So he was speaking in a New York accent so we could best
He
understand.
said, "Hey, what are you doing here? Are we gonna gladiate or what?"
And then after the movie, I was pleased. I was entertained. I had fun.
Oh, you're not entertained?
No, I was.
How did you watch Russell Crowe say, "Are you not entertained?" and then watch him say, "My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, father to a murdered son."
I don't even know if I got to that part.
You screwed yourself, mate. Because that's
I don't remember how
such a
far
good
I got
scene.
into the film.
You didn't care about Joaquin Phoenix as Commodus,
No,
Connie Nielsen as Lucilla, none of it.
no.
That's just poor taste. There's no other way to describe it.
It is what it is. I've accepted my fate. Before we continue, I want to say thank you for clicking on this video. We appreciate it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss any of our other episodes. We post new episodes every Monday and Thursday.
You never know when Aaron's going to drop shirtless pics, feet pics on the pod, so you don't want to be part of the select group to miss that because he usually takes them down pretty quickly right away.
Exactly. It's like, hey, if you're here, you're here. If you're not, you missed it out. So,
It's a marketing ploy, we'll admit it.
hey, you got to do what you got to do.
Get followers, get subscribers.
Exactly.
So let's go into our next segment. We're going to talk about your side, Aaron, the rating and return on investment for the movie.
Absolutely. So this movie obviously came out this year, 2024. It's rated R, 2 hours and 28 minutes long. How did the length of the movie feel to you? Did it feel long? Did it go by quick?
I thought maybe that it dragged towards the end.
I feel like, yeah, towards the end, I was like, man, how long has it been? But it was almost over at that point.
Yeah, it felt like a similar length to Wicked, but Wicked was 20 minutes longer. So
Oh,
not the end of the world.
yeah. IMDb has this movie at a 7 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes has it at a 71% for the tomato rating, which is the critics with 294 reviews. And then the popcorn meter, which is the audience, has it at an 84% with 2,500 plus reviews.
Yeah, the IMDb rating is kind of middling considering what I was hearing about the movie before it hit mass audiences. They're like, you know how certain groups will get to see the movie early. The early reactions to the movie were incredibly favorable and saying it was like the best thing since sliced bread.
Yeah, I think it's kind of mellowed out once people started seeing it, like audiences.
Still pretty successful though on
critics.
that audience rating, 84%. I think you said.
Yeah,
That's still pretty darn good.
it's really good.
Yeah.
And then the first Gladiator has an 8.5 out of 10. Obviously, with more
A lot more views.
people seeing it
Been
and
out for
stuff.
almost
I don't know what the
25
Rotten Tomatoes is. I don't have that pulled up. But the budget for this film was $250 million. And we're recording this the Monday after it dropped. So it's only been open one weekend. Box office. What do you think the box office made in the first weekend?
I'm probably gonna say like 110 million.
110. Unfortunately, you are off. And you're off by quite a bit.
How much did it make?
220.5 million.
That's such good news for my box office team. Oh my goodness. That's a good the look on your face. $210 million?
No. 220.5. You said it wrong on purpose, lower than what I said, just so you'd make me say it again.
What was it? 200? I'm just kidding.
It's probably gone up.
since I last asked.
Yes.
And like I was explaining to you too, before we started filming, this movie's probably going to be in for a good second weekend because Thanksgiving weekend is coming up next. It will have already passed by the time this has come out to you guys, but it'll have had us pretty good expectations for its second weekend because of the holiday.
Yeah, all of this is very stupid, but whatever.
This is Barbenheimer numbers, dude. Glicket is on top of the world right now. I'm shocked. Gladiator made more money than Wicked. From what I was hearing of the early box office reports, I thought Wicked was going to make more. Wicked's gross worldwide is 162,500,000 as of right now.
Yeah, okay.
So Gladiator came out on top the first weekend. It's an R-rated movie. It's, I mean, Glicket has.
I think a lot of old fans of the first one are like really getting out there to go see it.
Come on, people, show up for me. I'm trying to put. I don't want to beat Arron. I want to put Arron in the dirt.
Aaron's already in the dirt.
I want to grind Aaron's bones into paste for the box office.
Already
draft.
feel it. Yeah, you can stop grinding.
You can ease up.
Yeah, like let's settle down.
Wow, a $200 million opening weekend is incredible for an R-rated historical epic.
Everyone's so great.
Everyone who was like talking about Oppenheimer, you know, as being R-rated, and well, I guess it's a little bit easier for action movie, you know, drawing a bigger blockbuster crowd. But still, I mean,
It honestly didn't even feel R-rated.
no, I didn't feel it didn't
Did
like
it?
today's modern R-rated standards are so different though. Like if you look at movies that are R-rated in the 80s and 90s, it's a world of difference. Now we're watching The Boys and we think somebody has to like rip somebody's head off to be R-rated.
True. But like there wasn't any profanity really. You know, like how many F words can you think of? If any. And then there wasn't any sex scenes.
It was just probably
So
R-rated
it
for
was
gore.
Just
which
the
was
gore.
very
which,
minimal, it felt like.
Yeah, the gore wasn't anything like super over the top. They showed someone's head getting cut off, but it was pretty quick. And like you said, like it's nothing compared to The Boys. And that's a TV show, you know? So I think it's a soft R rating.
I would agree.
I think it could have easily been PG-13. It was probably, honestly, just that cutting of the head that really pushed it over.
Push them over the limit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have, if I was them, I maybe would have fought a little bit harder for a PG-13, maybe changed a little bit of the film because it just opens it up to a bigger audience.
Yeah.
People don't have to have their ID to
Right.
buy a ticket or a 21-year-old with them.
Hey, they're doing pretty good.
They're doing fine, yeah.
The first one had and again, 24 years ago, so inflation's in there. But The budget was $103 million, and they made $465.5 million. So, pretty decent return 24 years ago.
That's part of why I picked it for my box office team this time around, because when I adjusted the numbers for inflation from the first movie, it went up from like 400 million to like 800 million. So I was like, oh, this movie was a resounding success.
Yeah, I'm going to fire my research department. They're gone. We're starting over. Complete rehaul for next year's draft. Everyone in the front office is being let go. We're full on New York Jets mode right now. Like, we're in the middle of getting rid of our Hall of Fame quarterback because he's trash right now.
But the thing is,
his name is coincidentally also Arron. So
I think you should give this Arron another shot, because I want the three-peat, but if you bring in our new research team, I might lose. But they did a really good job with this movie, with the marketing and as well as with the casting. I think nowadays people are going to see movies for casts more than ever. I mean,
and people have been saying like movie stars are dead. It's clearly not
the thing is, nowadays we're in the world, I think, of the ensemble, because you used to have people rushing to the theater for Jim Carrey specifically, for Adam Sandler specifically. Now it's like you have Timothy Chalamet, Zendaya, like the cast of Dune and the cast of Gladiator read like a call list for like the top 50 most popular celebrities in Hollywood.
Like, have you seen some of the confirmed actors and actresses, and even some of the rumored ones for Christopher Nolan's new film?
It's
absolutely stacked.
Apparently, Robert Pattinson got added to the list. It started with Matt Damon and Tom Holland. It just went from there. Zendaya,
I think Zendaya is linked to it. Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, I think there's also another popular actress too that I can't remember who it was. But a lot of big name actors.
Anna de Armas. we can dream.
Yeah.
Florence Pugh.
It's just the whole cast of Oppenheimer. Robert Downey Jr. Bring them all back. Run it back.
He said, "Time for round two."
Yeah.
All right. Let's get into our next category. We're going to talk about who's in front of and behind the camera for Gladiator 2. We like to start with behind the camera, pay homage to the people who help build the film behind the scenes that don't get talked about quite as much. The director of this movie, we've already mentioned, is the iconic Sir Ridley Scott. I believe he is knighted as a Sir. And then the editor is John Mathiasson, the cinematographer is John Mathiasson, who he said was the cinematographer.
So you're doing this from memory, and it's
getting a little mixed up.
Yeah, it's kind of, there's a little bit of bumps there, you know.
I had it pulled up, but then I think I pulled away from it to get the wicked numbers. Let me pull it back.
You probably remember it all. You're just having, trouble getting it out.
Yeah, exactly. It's just
it's all there.
I'll take credit for that.
Yeah. I know you know it.
So our writers for the film: screenplay credits for David Scarpa, stories for Peter Craig, and story for David Scarpa again. Characters created by David Franzoni. That's a credit predicated upon the first movie. He was a writer on the first Gladiator. Editing is Sam Restivo and Claire Simpson. And music is our last main category that we go over. Music is Harry Gregson Williams, which they did have Hans Zimmer on the first movie. They weren't able to get him back because of scheduling conflicts. It's always unfortunate to not see Hans, but, he can't be everywhere all at once.
Yeah, he can't do every single movie.
I think...
How many other movies has he worked on this year?
Probably
a few, right?
He was on Dune.
Yes.
Part 2. I don't know what else this year, but I know that their
productions for all these movies overlap quite a bit too, even with them coming out at like different times of the year.
Exactly, yeah, because they have to strategically pick a release date.
Right.
So then for our cast for the movie, we've already mentioned many of them, but the star of the movie as Lucius is Paul Mescal, and then we also have Denzel Washington. We have Connie Nielsen reprising her role as Lucilla, Pedro Pascal. We have Joseph Quinn. Who else am I missing? You have it pulled up on there?
I do, but that's pretty much all the like big names that I recognize.
Who played the other emperor? Fred Hetchinger.
Yes.
Yeah,
he looks a lot different in this picture than he did on screen, doesn't he?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, they transformed them.
Yeah, he looks a lot younger on screen than he does right here.
I thought they both looked really cool. I thought the visual, character design and set design of this movie. We'll get to that too in just a minute, but I thought it was very good.
Yeah, we're going to break down each aspect of filmmaking and give it a rating that will total our overall score. And set and character design is one of those categories that we talk about. And I think they did a great job with that too. It was a little foreshadow.
Yeah, let's go into our scores. I'm ready. Are you?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, we have different categories. We have 6 of them that we use to rate a film, and it helps us take the bias out, helps us be a little more constructive with our criticism, if you will. And the first one starts with story. We believe this to be the most important part of a movie. This is out of 10 points. Andrew, what'd you think of the story of Gladiator 2?
I don't know if I was too hard on this movie, I'll say out the gate, but I gave the story a 6 out of 10.
Wow. Really? Should I lower mine?
We've talked about this a couple times in the past with our different reviews, but when there's a sequel, I think you're inherently comparing it to the
You
original.
get excited. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it changes expectations, but it also changes my ratings because you've the plots are intermingled. It's a true sequel. It's not like a revamp of the movie. So I think that for me, they just took too many elements from the first movie and repeated them. And the main strength of the first movie to me is wanting to follow Maximus into battle. And I don't think the story of this movie did as good a job of selling me and feeling that for the main character.
Yeah, and I didn't have that like emotional connection to the first one.
I also feel like it was a little convoluted how. Let me hear your score. I want to talk about something
I
else
give
in
it a
minute.
7 out of 10. I thought the story was fine, but I didn't think it like stuck out to me. Like I don't think it's gonna draw me back to the movie or like a ton of times, where I want to rewatch this movie over and over again. I also don't think like in a month or 2, 3, I will be thinking about this movie a lot. Like with the Batman, I was thinking about that years afterwards, consistently thinking about
this day.
the story and the characters and the locations of everything.
He said years. It's been 2 years since it came out.
That would be years. That is plural.
Just you put a lot of
2
emphasis
is
on years.
plural.
It's barely
Well, I'm
years.
saying in 3 months, I don't even know if I'm going to be thinking back to this movie.
I hear you.
For the story,
I think that for
Give
me,
me a hard time. You already grind my bones into the dirt enough earlier. To keep knocking me down here.
you got too much confidence. I think that one of my problems with the plot of this movie is it just feels like it's bending over backwards to tie itself back to the original when I feel like it really should not have been that hard. Like the subplot for Lucius, you didn't have to put him 1,000 miles away from Rome at the start of the movie. They wrote this backstory where his mom sent him away, because she's worried that somebody would come for his throat because of him being next in line to be king. But I mean, wouldn't people come for her? Like, wouldn't she go with him? Why would she abandon her son when the whole plot of the first movie is about how she loves her son more than anything in the world? I get that people are gonna argue that she loves him so much that's why she had to send him away. But I mean, she didn't do a good job of coming back for him. She seemed to have given up on ever finding him. I don't know. I didn't feel that same familial connection that I felt from the first movie, where Maximus's wife and son were never really alive on screen except for in flashbacks in his imagination and momentarily as the Roman guard approached them to kill them. I still felt like more of an emotional connection from Maximus to them than I felt between this mother and son pair, which shouldn't be the case because they're both alive and present in the movie.
Right. Yeah, so his original wife died in the film, right?
Yeah, Arashi or something like that.
So then he, later in the film, got with this girl that was in the second one?
You're talking about Maximus
Yes.
now. So let me explain this for people too, because other people might be confused on this.
I know Zach was a little like questioning it as well. So
Yeah. In the first Gladiator, Maximus and Lucilla are the main male and female leads of the movie. And when Maximus meets her at their camp after the battle of the intro in Germania, he talks to Lucilla and they talk about their romantic past. And Maximus says that his son, who he has with this other woman, lives in Trujillo, where Maximus is from. Maximus says his son is nearly 8, and Lucilla says her son is nearly 8. And then throughout the rest of the movie, subtextually and through their interactions, we know that they had a relationship, that they had slept together, but then Maximus went on to get married to another woman. So although it's never...
So he was with her first and then got married to someone else.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what's insinuated in the story, and there's, like I said, subtext. And I've been trying to tell this to people online, too, who are disagreeing with me. But there's subtext that he would have been the true father of Lucius and not Lucilla's husband who had passed away.
Gotcha.
Because if you think about it, if she was slept with Maximus and they conceived a child, and then she soon after that met her then to be husband, if she told him that she thought she was impregnated by another man in the year 180 AD, what do you think would have been the outcome for her?
They probably would have like thrown her a party, celebrated,
Pat on the back, ice cream.
probably like went through like legal
Yeah.
documentation to adopt him.
For the history of the world at that time, it would have been probably horrible for her. At the very best case scenario, he would have like just left her. Um, so imagine she would have kept that a secret, and whether she knew for certain it was Maximus's son or not. But by the point of Gladiator 2 coming out, the writing indicates that she seems to be 100% positive that Lucius is Maximus's son, and then like just the evidence of the warrior blood that flows through Lucius's veins is seen on
You
screen.
have his strength.
Yeah, I don't have his strength. I wish that were true. But yeah, that's basically I think what you can take away from it, even though it's not plainly stated in the movie. It seems like he could have been the father of Lucius.
So what was I guess touch on maybe a little bit some of your favorite parts of the movie, but then what really brought it to a 6? I know you're kind of talking about that family connection and stuff, but like what about it really brought it down for you?
Yeah, I mean, what I liked about the movie was I liked how Paul Mescal's character was focused on rage. I liked the idea. Denzel said it more than once. He said that he was driven by rage and that his brutality would, resonate with the audience at the Coliseum. I feel like they just took half measures with a lot of the things that they did. They took half measures with their villains. They cut off the emperors at the knees by going into the third act and replacing them.
It was the head, but whatever.
Same difference. But I feel like they just took a lot of half measures. They didn't go hard enough on the rage. I think they didn't go bloody enough, like we talked about with the soft R rating. They could have had just Maximus just butchering people, stabbing them repeatedly after they are already clearly dead, things like that, to really sell that rage. I felt like his rage was a little bit hollow. I mean, like situations like him yelling at his mom to get out of here, I wanted to see more brutality from the movie. I thought that the fight scenes would be a little bit more, just more in general. Like I wanted to see better choreography out of the fight scenes. Now
Yeah.
time's come so far.
I feel like the fights were objectively good, but there's not that one key fight or even multiple moments that really stick out. Like after seeing the whole movie and kind of thinking back to it and stuff, like
My favorite,
there's no Winter Soldier knife drop or, like all those different moments that you think back to during a fight, like Creed 3, you know what I'm saying?
yeah, my favorite Creed 3. My favorite my favorite Swords and Sandals movie is 300, and it's not really close. And that movie has so many iconic moments of action sequences that you could pluck out 5 out of thin air, and scenes like when the lieutenant to Leonidas loses his son and he just charges like with mayhem and reckless abandon into battle. Scenes like that feels like the rage I wanted to see. I mean, he was just no care for his own well-being, screaming, guttural rage. Like, I don't know, I feel like the movie didn't deliver enough, and it felt like they were going back and forth with what they wanted to do with the plot. Because it seemed like initially they were going against the plot of him trying to be the savior of Rome, the way that Maximus was trying to bring back Marcus Aurelius's beliefs, and they were trying to go this route where Lucius was purely about vengeance for his murdered wife, and he was so consumed by rage he didn't even see any other outcomes. He just wanted to kill the general. And then they kind of flipped the script on that and went to the Maximus route of him being the savior of Rome and trying to restore power to the Senate and the people, which is the exact plot of the first Gladiator, restoring power to the Senate, killing the emperor. I feel like there's these little things they did to try to make it seem different, like having Denzel usurp the emperors and become the real villain. But it just didn't differentiate the movie enough.
I did like Denzel as the villain. Obviously, he's a fantastic actor, and whenever he's on screen, he demands your attention. I do wish the emperors were a little more threatening, I guess, to where I feared them as well. And then when they fall, I like really fear whoever brought them down.
In the first movie, they do a great job of talking about how Rome is the mob. Rome is the collective, and you can't defy the mob because they will turn up, and riot against their leaders. And that is the controlling facet of the movie. If you win over the mob, then you control Rome, and that's what Maximus is doing the whole first movie. And it's really binding Commodus's hands because he wants to just kill Maximus, but he can't just have a guard go in and stab Maximus because the mob would turn against him. And in this movie, it didn't feel like they really focused on the mob. Yes, the Rome started rioting in the streets, but they didn't use them as like a motivator for why the emperors were making their decisions. The emperors just kind of he said he was taking his decisions from the gods, and then when Lucius defied him, he just seemed mad. He didn't do anything about it. He just let Lucius walk out. When Maximus defies the emperor Commodus in the first movie and refuses to kill, he's met by a bunch of Praetorian guards as he's trying to leave, and then Commodus goes down there and talks to him, and the only reason he doesn't have Maximus killed is because Romans are chanting Maximus's name, reminding Commodus that he can't do whatever he wants, limiting his power. I don't know. It
Checks
felt
and balances.
Yeah, it felt a lot more sensible,
Motivated.
The world felt more motivated, more real in the first movie.
Okay.
But it did look good. That helped the world feel more real.
Yeah. We'll get to that in a minute, but before we get into the cinematography and how the film looked, we're going to go into acting. That's our next category that we talk about in review. This is also out of 10 points. And this includes a lot of the stunt work as well. And so there's a lot more to consider than just them saying their lines. How well did they get into character? How well did they make you forget that they're the actors and that they're actually who they're playing? How well did they do the choreography and all that stuff? So a lot goes into this. What did you give the acting?
I gave it an 8 out of 10.
8? I give it an 8.5. I thought the acting was great, even if maybe the writing and the story wasn't anything it was good, but it wasn't anything that really stuck out. I think everyone played their role really well. And like I said, I felt their character's presence.
Yeah, I didn't like the route that they went with the story of Denzel's character in the third act, and that kind of undercut his character for me, but that has absolutely nothing to do with his acting. It just kind of took me out of it. But I did really enjoy Denzel's performance. Connie Nielsen's great. Paul Mescal did amazing. He had to deliver 4 locker room speeches in the course of this movie, like it was Friday Night Lights every other night in the Coliseum.
You didn't like those speeches?
I thought it were a little tired,
Okay.
a little heavy-handed,
repetitive.
Yeah, it felt like they were trying to shoehorn him in there, tell me I'm supposed to feel motivated.
Yeah.
Maximus, I feel like motivated me watching the first movie just through. It was like his poise, the way he stood, the way everything he did with so much intention that it felt like he felt like a leader. It felt like I wanted to follow him.
He demanded that respect rather than it being directed to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This definitely felt more planned, whereas Russell Crowe
choreographed. Hey, this is your leader. This is your tough guy. He may be the smallest one out there, but he's the one that's the most fierce.
And Russell Crowe's character in the first Gladiator, just something about it. It felt like he didn't want that so badly, but it was just too much a part of him. He was still, even after losing his whole family and wanting nothing but to just kill Commodus and then die, he still couldn't take the general out of the man. The general was still in there.
That's my favorite piece of acting advice that I've heard, which I haven't heard a lot necessarily. I'm not an actor and I haven't had people direct me or give me advice, but when I've heard this piece of advice is an actor isn't trying to feel these feelings. They're trying to hide their feelings. People throughout life aren't just putting their feelings out there. They're trying to put on this mask, they want to present themselves in a certain way. The character doesn't want to cry in moments that they're crying. They get overwhelmed with emotion and cry. They're trying to hold it in. Another example is a drunk doesn't act drunk. A drunk is trying to act sober. To where they're picking up their glass and they're really trying to steady it rather than, oh, I'm picking up my glass and I am drunk. You're trying to downplay your emotions, but they just seep through. And it's interesting that you said that's what Russell Crowe felt like in the first film.
Oh my gosh. And it's one of the best examples of that, and I think in cinematic history is one of a very top tier performance, deserving of Best Actor, and I feel like he just oozes those leadership qualities.
Yeah.
I mean, Paul Mescal's character just didn't have the same, and it's part of it's in the writing too. He didn't have the same respect to be demanded because naturally on the battlefield as the general of the Roman legions, of the top prospect of Marcus Aurelius, Maximus was just the best warrior anywhere he went. And it felt more like their intention with Lucius was he was just scrappy. He may not be the best out there, but has the most rage.
Which can be interesting.
Yeah, I just feel like they took half measures on that, and that's where they sold themselves short. Because I do
Maybe
want them to
maybe there should have
differentiate
been a little more like conflict of another warrior out there, another gladiator trying to take that position of like, hey, no, like I'm the alpha here.
Well, it also,
You know, like maybe not them like necessarily fighting each other, but them like challenging that like, hey, I'm in charge role.
I feel like
Maybe it would have been more earned.
it also made it feel less believable that he was this person who gets back up every time he gets knocked down, because I feel like he didn't get injured enough in the movie. I mean, that even
He
in
took the hits,
but then he would
they
get up
didn't-
uninjured.
They didn't show the impact
Yeah.
of how hard those hits were necessarily.
Yeah.
Like when they were fighting with those spiked gloves on, like he got hit how many times in the face?
and they seemed like heavy-handed hits, but I wanted him to get up with like bruises,
Yeah,
bleeding.
like
that
a
would
hole in his lip.
I want that to show me. Like the worst injury I saw on him was the calluses on his hands when he was working on rowing the boat.
Like his skin must be so tough to
Yeah.
not have a hole in his cheek
that
from those
farming
gloves.
life.
Yeah,
He was out
that's
there in the
right.
fields.
What did you think of
Joseph Quinn or Pedro Pascal.
Pedro Pascal's character? We talked about it a little bit last night with Sierra and Zach after the movie during our little debrief that we have outside the theater. But bring it to our audience here. What did you think of his performance and his character's arc and stuff?
I honestly think he was the most intriguing addition to the movie because of the fact that he was really similar to Maximus, but like in a different position than Maximus was in. Because he just like Maximus wanted to fight his final battle, retire, and return home and just be with his loved ones and his family. But Maximus never got to make it back to Rome as the general. So it's like a version of Maximus that Maximus conquered Germania, and then Numidia was conquered by Pedro Pascal's character. Pedro just got back to Rome and then was trying to decline his role there. So it's like a what if storyline for what if Maximus got home. So I found it really interesting to see him as like a battle-hardened soldier. But even more so than Maximus, it seemed like he was tired of the violence. Maximus, I think, was tired of
Being away from home.
yeah, he wanted to be with his love. He just loved his wife and son so much. But I think Pedro Pascal was more like, he was almost converting to pacifism. Like he was like, he's like, it hurt.
Enough's enough.
Yeah, it hurt his heart to watch the family members of his opponents watch their dead be burned in Numidia. Like he was actually feeling empathy for the families of his enemies.
Yeah.
Whereas like there was really no families of the enemies in the first Gladiator. Like, the Germania people were just depicted kind of quote unquote as like brutes or savages. Like there was no family around in that battle. So they really focused on like the weary heart of a warrior kind of aspect. And I thought it was a really cool writing aspect, but then it also kind of took the sails out of the fight between him and Lucius at the same time, because he doesn't want to fight Lucius. He doesn't want to fight anybody really anymore.
Yeah, it felt like there was no stakes in that fight, and that was the most hype part of the trailer. I thought, like these two, they're gonna duke it out, and this is gonna be that final third act fight that's gonna be huge. This is gonna have that memorable choreography, cinematography, and character points that we're gonna be thinking about and talking about next year.
But instead you got to surrender.
But instead, yeah, they both end up surrendering, which could be cool in some capacity, but in this case, it kind of took out the stakes of the fight, It felt like they didn't really earn the surrender as much as I would have liked,
You also have
Like Lucius churned and listened to him quicker than I would have liked. Like he's had months of fighting to maybe weeks of fighting to get to this point, and he's finally in front of him, and he has this opportunity. Like maybe he could be like turning around and yelling at him, like, "No, stand up!" Like,
don't you think that
get off your knees and fight me, and like getting more emotional into it.
wouldn't have made more sense if Pedro Pascal won the fight and then refused to kill Maximus or Lucius instead of just because then that's a more powerful motivator for Lucius to change his mind if he has his life spared.
But does that undercut Lucius from being the hero of the
I
story?
imagine that's why they didn't do it, because they want Lucius to be more of a threat.
But I feel like you can be imperfect as the leader, or
Yeah.
like I feel like you don't always have to be the one on top to be that like character.
Like maybe he could have even learned a lesson there. Like maybe he's just so lost in his anger that the more experienced and older opponent who's more wise is able to use his momentum against him.
That's where he realizes he needs to channel his rage.
Yeah, he harnesses the rage instead of letting it control him.
Yeah, and maybe his rage is why he lost the fight.
Yeah.
Not because he's the
skilled.
worst. Yeah, exactly. Maybe they're equally matched, but because he was so emotional and overwhelmed with this rage, Pedro's character was able to get the upper hand.
And then bring that lesson back into play after Denzel kills his mother. When he's fighting Denzel, he controls himself as opposed to letting the emotion of his mother's killer take over. He controls himself and wins the fight.
I think I would have liked that better. I think I would have liked the general kind of going on top, like, and then they kill him there for not killing him.
Well, he seems to me like he would win the fight, all things even.
Yeah,
I mean, they depicted him like he was just ready for battle. Like all his men respected him.
Fierce general.
Yeah,
right.
He rushed in.
He had 5,000 men ready to fight for him.
Yeah, and then when he fought those 4 guards, he sliced through them like Swiss cheese.
It was almost too quick.
Yeah, easy money.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I would have liked that better rather than him dying just on his knees because he didn't want to fight anymore.
But all that considered, Pedro still did a great job with the performance on screen. As he always does. He delivers.
And he looked so cool.
Yeah. I wish the world had given Pedro Pascal the attention he deserved earlier, because he was still doing roles. I think he's in like Buffy the Vampire Slayer episode when he's younger, but he didn't really break out, I would say, until maybe the second Kingsman movie. And
I don't even remember him in that movie.
Yeah, it's a ways back now.
Yeah.
But he's obviously one of the biggest stars in the world now. I just wish that we had more time with more Pedro movies.
Hey, who says we're like gonna have not that many coming up?
No, I mean I'm sure we will. We've already got him as Reed Richards, so
yeah.
I'm just greedy. Just greedy for more.
I know, you want too much, man. We're getting a lot of Pedro Pascal right now.
Never enough. Never.
All right, ready to move on to our next category, cinematography?
Let's do it.
All right, so this category encapsulates a lot. Cinematography is a broad term in the sense of our rating system. This goes over the camera angles, the composition, the editing of the film, the lighting, the special effects as well. So both the computer animated effects, but also the effects that are being done in camera.
We got the cinema and the photography.
That's right, all put together into one here. We also have like the color grade and the editing and all of that. This is out of 10 points. Andrew, what'd you give it?
I gave it a 7.5.
Okay, I'm at an 8, so I've been just above you this whole time here.
Yeah, I docked it a considerable amount because I personally did not like the color grade. And I know we disagree here because we talked about it outside the theater.
Yeah, I enjoyed the color grade. At no point during the film I thought anything negative of the color grade. And I spent a decent amount of time color grading, and it's very hard. And I think it was great, like especially technically it was good. And stylistically I enjoyed it as well.
I don't think that they did a bad job technically. I think that it's completely subjective, the reason I don't like it. So I don't think it's like they made some egregious mistake and just had a poor, editor or cutter. I think it's just that the movie for me lacked vibrancy. And I wanted a lot more colors in the movie, and there were points where, like towards the end of the movie, Lucius like reaching out as he's going towards the big raft that his mother died on. I feel like his arm, the color of his arm was just too close to the color of the backdrop because the color was kind of sucked out and desaturated. And then
I'd be interested to see like clips side to side from Gladiator, Gladiator 2 in like similar locations, right? Because it obviously takes place in the same location.
Well, that's
here
part of the
in
problem
Rome.
is the Colosseum, although it looks great, is like we talked about,
It's all the same color.
it's kind of one note. The
Yeah.
sand is beige, the marble is off-white.
That's why I'm like curious to see the difference, because I don't think you have the same critique about the first one, right?
No, not that I remember. I just watched it a couple days ago.
Yeah. So I'd like to see the screenshots next to each other to see like why this one, the new one, stuck out to you in that way.
I think that even just looking at the skin tones in my memory, that there's
Is Russell
more.
Crowe just tanner, or is it actually the color grade? It'd be interesting to look.
Yeah, I'll have to compare them more side by side to see
Yeah.
my opinion of the first one more aptly. But I was paying attention to it really closely because I knew we were doing the review.
Sure.
So I was watching for the coloring of the
Right.
whole movie. And then there was, especially too, because I think people are already complaining online about the lack of color in modern movies. So I was trying to look for it, and it was not paying the results that I wanted it to.
Yeah.
There were moments where I noticed like color. I told you that the green of the grass as they're taking the gladiators in cages over to Rome looked.
See, I think there is less color in terms of like set design, but I think there's more color in terms of like lighting. Like I think the lighting has gotten more dynamic over the years, and maybe the sets have been a little more neutralized.
In these older movies, I always think when they're using a lantern and maybe using it for practical light or what have you, I always am staring at them because they look so electronic. Because I know that if they have a lantern in a scene for a prolonged amount of time, they're most likely not using like a gaslit lantern or like a candle wick or anything like that, a torch. But if you look closely at these lanterns in these medieval movies, they're so clearly like electronic. I'm always staring at them.
Yeah, what was it? This movie that you said? Are the candles even moving?
No, I don't think so.
No, it was something else. It might have been like a trailer or something that we watched. Anyways, I had the cinematography at an 8.5 and I brought it down to an 8 because I couldn't think of that one or two shots that were like, whoa.
The shots I really liked in this movie were it's the classic Christopher Nolan move, which I know it's Ridley Scott, not Christopher Nolan, but the following shots. There's one of Pedro going into the arena, and there's probably more than one, but there's one specifically I can recall of Paul Mescal going into the arena, and it follows them through that big gate from behind, and it's cool because it's all obviously there's a big lighting change going outside from the tunnel. The tunnel's super dark, and it was really seamless transition. Like the focus looked really good the whole time. And
that's hard to do when the exposure changes.
It changes drastically
you have
too.
to-
Like when you watch it, it's like boom,
You have
light.
to really plan for a shot like that.
And they made it look really good. And also just to have the character front lit, like looking at their back silhouette, makes them look super badass. So
Yeah.
I like those shots a lot.
Yeah. But I feel like also we didn't see any like different camera technique or something that really like kind of separates it. Like in 300, we see the different zooms, of all the cameras because they had a 3-camera setup and, different focal lengths. So you can like really punch in, punch out. It's in slow motion. It's, like what was the cinematic style of this film?
There was a really cool shot in Wicked, I think that you
Really?
would have liked. There's a shot that early on in the movie that's coming underwater and it's moving really fast up towards the boat, and then you see Galinda's hand reaching through the water, and it like moves past her hand and continues like up above the water and like shows all of the school and Oz and everything.
Yeah,
It's
that's
like
cool.
got to be really technically challenging to. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of CGI in there too, but just looked really good. Cool camera movement.
Yeah, I think there's a few different ways that you can like have like a cinematic style or marquee shot, that kind of like, oh, like you remember that shot from that movie? And I just feel like there wasn't that present in this film. But I think technically and stylistically in terms of like how they chose their shots and their lighting and stuff, I think all looked really good.
I also think that when coming into the movie like this, John Wick has really changed the game for action movies because it's so hard to not want them to shoot a bit wider and a little bit longer takes. 'Cause
Yeah.
that's what they do in John Wick, and they really show the action because they have such good stunt work and stunt direction on those movies where they show more of it by moving the camera back, and they like have a little bit longer of a take where you can see more of the hits. You're getting a lot of cuts in these fight scenes, which is a lot of people's complaint of like the Dark Knight trilogy, which makes it a little bit easier to hide where the hits might not look as good.
It just depends on when you cut. Like if you cut in the middle of the swing. You know, like maybe you're losing some of that connection, because you see the beginning of it, and then you're seeing the end of it from a different angle. Maybe you're having to like relocate where the action is, and then by the time you do, it's already the impact is over. You know,
I can just get into the fights more with those a few seconds longer of a take because I get absorbed in it.
Yeah, for sure. And they did a decent job at that in this film. But that does put a lot of pressure on the actors and or stunt men and women to really get the choreography down and make it seem like they're hitting each other. I feel like at some points, no, it's definitely nitpicking here. You could like see them not following through with like a kick or a punch, like in the one that really sticks out to me was when Pedro Pascal's in the very opening scene is like running up the stairs and he kicks someone out of the way. It looked like the guy jumped out of the way, and like that's really hard to make all look real, especially with a big shot like that. There's a lot of moving pieces there.
Some of it looked like I said though. They sold one of the biggest accomplishments to me of this movie is the blending they did with practical and special effects. Like that shot where Pedro, like you said, he's just run up the steps. He hits a guy over the railing of the stairs and he falls and like breaks through this wooden awning. You can clearly tell that what probably happened there, just from inference, is he kicked a guy off the railing and he fell into some pad below. Yeah. But then it looked incredible. The transition into the what we saw on screen.
A lot of people in this movie got hit going backwards, but ended up falling forward over a railing.
That's just choreography.
Yeah.
And then there's a basic incongruity between armor. People getting stabbed right in their chest plate, and then another chest plate. It doesn't work.
It's like, solid.
It just depends on your plot armor.
Yeah.
That goes over your chest plate. Your plot armor goes on top.
Absolutely. But yeah, overall, I think the cinematography was pretty good. I thought the CGI, like you were saying, was pretty good. I think there's only one real moment where the CGI was like, maybe not on the same level as every other part, and that was, for me, the sharks.
I would agree.
I think the main shot for me was kind of when we first started seeing the sharks, and then they went underwater with the shark, and it came like real close. It just felt a little cartoony in comparison to all the other like pieces that we probably didn't even notice were happening. Like probably all of the arrow shots are CGI, and they all look fantastic.
Yeah.
Like you don't even notice that is CGI. The sharks really felt like a little out of place.
So much of the stuff with the Numidian wall and that ocean right there with ships coming in, that's probably a lot of that is special effects.
The water didn't look as good as like Avatar or something like that. Water's gotten really good, and we've been spoiled with that. Like the water in the new Planet of the Apes movie, mind-blowing.
I still thought it looked good, though. Yeah, that's crazy. I still thought it looked good in this movie, and you can't compare everything to Avatar Way of the Water. That's not even fair,
Yeah,
But it's just an example, I know. But the
Planet of the Apes, is known for really good CGI, but Planet of the Apes isn't like, hey, they're the go-to for water simulation, but their water was absolutely perfect.
And filmed in a parking lot, too.
Yeah.
The scene where they did the landscape shot of Rome looked really good. If you put it right next to the one from 2000, you can see how far they've come. And it's crazy, too, because the one for 2000 still looks pretty good today. Sure. And it must have looked phenomenal for 2000.
Then,
because it still looks pretty good. And they even have...
Well, that's what they won the Oscar for, right?
Yeah, visual effects is what you said. And then they have some shots that are definite homages back to the first one. Like, they do a shot of when they first get to the Colosseum, and from the ground view, the camera tilts up to look at just the scope and magnitude of the gigantic Colosseum. And that is exactly the shot they do when Maximus first gets to the Colosseum. So, like, you can put shots like that next to each other and just see how far the simulations have come.
And those are, I'd say, probably a lot of CGI in those shots, don't you think?
I think those ones are probably entirely CGI because the Colosseum that they quote-unquote built for to shoot these movies in is not to scale.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, a lot of the crowd is probably CGI, and
it might be
different levels of the Colosseum and stuff.
It might be mapped over like the actual Colosseum because obviously the Colosseum still stands today, but it has lots of wear and tear that it didn't have in 200 AD.
What did you think of like the animals and like the time frame, of like, or locations where like, that rhino with two horns wouldn't be here, or like there's no way they could have gotten sharks in there. Like, did that take you out of the movie at all? I feel like that was a big complaint that I heard going into this movie of like, oh, like it's not time period accurate.
Well, I mean,
Does that bother you at all?
I would say personally it doesn't bother me at all because I have very specific, limitations on my suspension of disbelief. I just want the stuff to make sense in the world that they're in. And considering they're supposed to be in a version of the real world, and the fact that for the Colosseum, they did transport animals from really far away because the Colosseum in Rome at the time was such a big deal and the spectacle was such a big deal to the people of Rome, they would transport animals on ships from Africa to like as far away as Africa to Rome. And maybe it's impractical to think about them getting sharks, but it's not impractical to think about monkeys, chimps, rhinoceros, lions, tigers. So yeah, I can stretch belief just a little bit further to say they could have got some sharks over there too. I mean, before that they built the pyramids. I feel like the pyramids are more impressive than getting sharks to Rome.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like they're both hard.
Yeah. if you asked me to do both, I would take getting the sharks to Rome.
Yeah. Sure.
Like, I could get some people together to build like a tank out of something
A tank?
to put the sharks in.
Oh, to put the sharks in.
Not,
I feel
not a tank, like a military tank.
Yeah, I was like, what are you talking? You just shoot the sharks all the way from the boat into the
That's probably what
Coliseum?
they did. They had built a super strong catapult.
Dude, we figured them out. We got this down. All right, let's go to sound design. This is our next category. This includes the soundtrack, the score. So the soundtrack is like any song with like lyrics and whatnot. A lot of times it's either a song that was specifically made for the movie or a song that's kind of been like repurposed for the movie. And then the score is all the instrumental music that we hear. And then they have the Foley work, which we're including in the sound design as well, which is all your sound effects that you hear. We say this pretty frequently, but most sound effects that you hear in a film is recorded separately, not from the actual tape that you're watching. A Foley artist goes through and makes different sounds. So if I were to pick up this cup and place it back down, that sound would be added and recorded after the fact, more times than not. So a lot goes into sound design. A lot of people in the industry say sound design is half of the viewing experience. If you have bad sound, whether it's audio levels for the dialogue or the music or the sound effects, it really takes away from the viewing experience. And it's something you don't notice unless if it's bad. Even if it's really good, you don't really notice how really good it is.
Yeah.
So what did you give this out of 10, Andrew?
I give the sound design a 7.5 out of 10.
I give it an 8.5. I feel like throughout the film, there was a bunch of parts where I was like, oh, yeah, this music's got me going. You know, for whatever reason, I was paying attention to the music a little bit more than I normally recognize it on the first viewing. But I was vibing with it.
I largely gave it a 7.5 on account of the Foley work being phenomenal. I thought in the movie, a lot of sounds for swords and just that classic swords and sandals sound of the unsheathing of a sword. And I feel like that was very, very satisfying in the movie. I personally didn't particularly notice the score too much. Also, I don't notice the score too much in the first one either, and that's with it being Hans Zimmer. So I
feel like there's not like that iconic track or like theme song, that plays in a few spots, like the Pirates.
Yeah. That's what I do actually notice it in the first one, and I did like it because I remember commenting that it sounds similar to Pirates.
Oh, it does. You're right. That is the movie that it sounds like
a little bit of like a bump, like a little bit of that feel. So I do like it in the first one.
Yeah,
it feels really reminiscent of Pirates.
Yes.
Which I think Hans Zimmer came out second.
Yeah, Hans Zimmer did Pirates of the Caribbean.
I think he did it with another composer too, didn't he?
I'm not sure. Possibly. But yeah, that's one of the most iconic
scores of all time.
Yeah.
But this movie doesn't really have any like songs because of the time period, so it's pretty much just score.
Like I'm not driving home going dun dun dun. I've been singing that for years.
I've been listening to that in the gym. Just
dude, it gets you going.
Like, hey, can you be quiet? I can't hear them because I have sound reducing headphones on Thursday, October 31st. The city streets are crowded for the holiday.
Dude, that's like a song. That's like part of the song at this point. Ready to go on to set and character design?
Yeah.
We're definitely not specialists in sound design, so we don't have as much to talk about.
We're not musicians.
Yeah, exactly. Set and character design is kind of more the reason why they're at different locations and why those locations look the way they do, and also like what the characters look like, how they are dressed, or even like the design of characters that are made up in CGI and all of that. And why they look like that. So set and character design for us is rated out of 5 points. Andrew, what did you give this category?
I might be going too hard on this movie, but I gave it a 4 out of 5, which I feel like is a really good score.
Yeah, that's interesting that you would say that.
I could even see giving it higher because the set is very, very strong for this movie.
Yeah, I gave it, I think I went back between a 3.5 to a 4.
Really?
And I think I settled at a 3.5. And it could easily be a 4 in my eyes too. But I sat at the 3.5. I thought the outfits were absolutely phenomenal. I think for me, maybe it would be like kind of a lot of the ships. I don't think we're as good as like the Colosseum pieces and whatnot. But I loved all of the costuming.
Yeah, I really
So much. I want to wear a gladiator armor.
When I saw the Emperors come out, I was like, I got to get me one of those.
Dude.
They look like they were dripping
Denzel
swag.
wearing gold jewelry. He looks phenomenal.
He looked really great as well.
Badass.
I really liked the armors are great, but I really love just the Emperor getup. It's like that kind of. It's like half casual, half
robe.
Yeah,
Capes. They have capes, man.
makes me
And
want
I
some
love
sandals.
capes. You know I love capes.
yeah. But I thought everyone's outfits were great. I mean the red outfit for Pedro was awesome. The white outfit.
The white outfit. He looked fly in that.
The white outfit for the Emperors was my favorite in the movie, and then they even connecting the clothing to the story is always a great thing. They brought back Maximus's chest plate, and Lucius wore it in this movie with
A little predictable, but
yeah.
stereotypical.
Well, everything in this movie is like I don't think it's a super fair complaint, honestly, to say that the movie is too much like the first one. I don't think it's fair to say you're surprised by it, I should say.
Yeah.
It's a fair complaint of the movie, but the trailer told you that. The trailer has like 4 lines from the first movie. I think it shows the Maximus Memorial.
It's fun. I don't think it was like overwhelming or even forced.
I thought there was one moment where it felt really forced.
I mean, obviously, I haven't seen the whole first one, so like,
It's when Lucius says "in this life or the next," because it felt like they shoehorned that in there. It wasn't really super fitting for the conversation he used it in, but it's one of the best lines
so
in the first
did
movie.
Maximus in the first film not say a metal point and a wood point is still a point?
No.
Because that was fire. That was gas. Straight gas.
That's the stupidest
They
line.
were cooking right
That's the
there.
stupidest line in the movie. You know it?
Dude, a point is a point, whether it's steel or wood.
Steel or wood, a point is still a point.
Dude,
Yeah, no.
as ridiculous as that line was, he sold it.
His voice was great.
Right there, he acted his ass off for that line.
I would have been like,
How hard do you think you would have a time where you have this line as an actor and you're like, this is the stupidest line I've ever heard, but having to give a good delivery of it? Like, how hard of a time do you think you would have with that?
I think I would just put my head down and do it if Ridley Scott's the director and he has this. If you have somebody who just knows better than you objectively, I would just follow their
your
expertise.
eyes would be rolling in the side, like deep down.
I might go home and complain about it. I might text you and be like, "Oh man, they should rewrite this." But am I going to pick my head up out of the sand and fight against genius? I'll just trust that I'm wrong.
What if you're in like Madam Web? And like you're not working with Ridley
Why so much
Scott.
shade to the director of Madam Web? You think he's not as good as
Or the Flash.
he or she?
Or the Flash.
I actually think Madam Web is better than that woman. Yeah.
I feel like that'd be difficult, to say lines that you're like, why is this character saying this?
Even the director of The Flash, though, and Andy something, he's the director from It, so it's still a pretty accomplished.
Oh, yeah.
successful director.
All of these people that we're talking about know way more than me and you.
Yeah.
Like, let's get that straight. We're not naive to that fact.
Don't worry. We know where we stand.
Anything else about the set and character design you want to talk about?
No, I felt like they got really creative with the Coliseum. I felt like they tried to keep it fresh by bringing in new animals, bringing in the water scene. I feel like Numidia looked really good for the short time that we were there. So I feel like they tried to I feel like they tried to do stuff to differentiate from the first movie, but it was just, like I said, half-assed. It was very, very similar.
Yeah. Which I feel like isn't a terrible thing.
Yeah, you want people to like the same stuff about this movie that they liked about the first one.
And I feel like the purpose of this film, in a way, is to introduce more people to the story in general, and I think that was achieved. Obviously, the box office numbers show that, it's to kind of bring it into the next generation, so it's cool in a sense, but I understand the complaints. Our last category here is rewatchability. This is a fun category. This is definitely our most like subjective part of our rating here. Rewatchability, the way we phrase this is out of 5 times if you're doing absolutely nothing, and someone asks you to watch this movie, how many times are you saying yes? Out of 5, Andrew, what'd you give it?
I gave it a 2 out of 5.
So did I. Our first score that matches.
I thought we might be the same actually on this one.
Yeah, and I enjoyed the movie. I'm definitely not dying to see it again, but I wouldn't be upset or bored if it was on again.
What is your favorite Swords and Sandals movie? Ooh. I got this genre from a Netflix subheading.
I've never heard of Swords and Sandals. I don't know. I feel like, honestly, I haven't seen that many.
300, Immortals, Troy.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of those.
Gladiator.
I haven't seen any of those.
You've seen half of Gladiators. You haven't
half of Gladiator.
You haven't seen 300?
No, I've seen like a third of it.
You scumbag.
You already know this. You already know this.
Yeah, but I have to I can't remember all the movies you haven't seen because they're so high in number. I have to learn it again and be pissed off all over again. How have you not seen 300?
Why did you have to bring it up all the time?
You haven't finished because it's a great movie.
No, why do you have to bring it up? How I haven't seen all these movies?
You haven't seen all of 300. You haven't seen all of Gladiator, dude. That is crazy.
Yeah, well, you're crazy too in different ways.
300 is such a good movie. It's the ultimate
let's watch it together sometime.
Movie. I watched it like a couple months ago. I'd watch it again.
All right, let's watch it.
I just watched Good Will Hunting twice in a week. I can watch 300 again.
Yeah, let's watch it. And then we'll work out after.
Disappointing me right now.
I'm sorry. I'm a failure. I admit.
You need to sleep less. Sleep less, watch more movies.
I love sleep.
I love movies. What's the difference between us?
All right, what does this give your total rating for this movie out of 10 points here?
My total rating's a 7.0. Pretty middling.
Mine's a 7.5. And I think part of that is because I haven't seen the first one.
Yeah, I think it's not as good as the first one. I think that's inarguable. If you think Gladiator 2 is better than Gladiator 1, you're tripping balls. And I didn't think it would be. I said going into this multiple times to like you, my friend, my other friends. I said multiple times.
Andrew only has 2 friends, me and Sierra.
Hey. I got a few other friends cooking there too. I won't name their names, so they don't have to compete with each other. But I said multiple times going into it that I didn't think this movie was going to be as good as the first Gladiator because the first Gladiator just came out in a different time. They made movies differently. It's so built up on nostalgia.
What do you mean they made movies differently? I've heard that a few times in reference to this movie specifically.
I think that in years past, that movies had a little bit more of like magic to them. I think that there was a lot more wonderment to movies that were made in the 90s and 2000s. It's kind of
How?
Ethereal quality. I think it's partly like you touched on earlier, the difference in star power, but also just I feel like we were still learning to make movies. Like the CGI that they were using in Gladiator in 2000 was like basically being experimented with, So I feel like
Do you think it was more about the craft back then rather than the corporate greed?
Maybe that's a good way to say it, is that a little bit of the soul of it has been lost. A little bit of the storytelling's been lost because there's so much fear of disappointing audiences or
every studio is trying to make the next billion-dollar movie.
But that's why people were resonated with A24 so much when A24 first started getting popular, is because they would just make creative, unique, way out of left field movies with plots that would never get made by a bigger studio like Paramount. Not to throw shade to Paramount, but like A24 would roll the dice on a concept that was just sounded ridiculous to big movie execs.
Yeah, and some of them would land, and a lot of them didn't.
Yeah,
as well.
And that's the thing, is that movies tend to find their own audience too. It's just some audiences are smaller than others. You have to be willing to take that hit and find a smaller audience if you're going to want to find that diamond.
Like our podcast.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's a small audience, but it's the best audience out there.
That's right.
But yeah, I think that's a big part of what it was. Like Gladiator 2, they spent $250 million on it. They want to make a lot of money.
Yeah, for sure.
So they kind of tiptoe a little bit, you know. I think.
I mean, but they spent $100 million 24 years ago on Gladiator. They obviously wanted to make a lot of money then too, you know, like, is it really that big of a difference in terms of an investment in this movie compared to the first one?
I think it's more of the general climate. I mean, if, like the average movie being made now is a sequel or a remake. Gladiator 2 is a sequel. You know, a sequel just doesn't have as much flavor and originality as the first movie does because it's by definition not as original.
Yeah. It's a hard question to break down and really figure out. Maybe that'd be a good episode topic.
It's just so much more.
We really dive into that.
It's so much more of a feeling, you know?
Yeah.
But I think a big part of the
how do
feeling,
we articulate that feeling?
a big part of the feeling is a word I touched on earlier too, is nostalgia. Because the 2000s and 90s movies are the movies I grew up watching.
Right.
So they feel magical because they make me feel like I'm the age I was when I first saw them.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. Anything else you want to talk about for Gladiator?
No, nothing in particular. I mean, that's my main takeaway would be that it's a good movie that I think everyone should go and see. Probably buy 2 tickets.
Yeah. The only last question I have for the audience is, are you not entertained? Now that we've wrapped up this review, let us know how you liked the episode down in the comments below. What did you think of Gladiator 2 in comparison to the first one, maybe on its own as well? What did you think of the first Gladiator? Let us know down in the comments. What movie should we review next? We're always looking for new suggestions. Maybe recommend a movie that neither of us have seen, and we'll kind of reach into expand our horizons a little bit and find something new. Andrew's always wanting to find new movies, and I sometimes watch movies.
Aaron's seen a movie this year.
Yeah. Gladiator 2. The perfect example. But make sure you hit that subscribe button and a notification bell so you don't miss any of our future posts, whether it's a full episode or one of our specialty videos. A few weeks ago, we filmed a video challenge where Andrew and I went head-to-head to create 3 shots that were centered around Christmas. So that'll be coming out next month. And we're going to... Yeah, it's a challenge. So
it's going to come out eventually.
Hopefully I have a better shot at beating him in this than I do whenever we do a box office draft. Let's just say that. Hopefully the race is a little closer.
It'll probably be more than 0%.
Yeah, well, like hopefully a little more than that. Like, at least 50%, you know, or it could go either way.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying 0% is the chance you have in a box office draft. So it'll probably be
so
more.
far, yes. That has been the percentage of my win. My win column here.
What does that make my percent?
What else do you want to let the audience know? Where else can they find us?
Make sure to check us out on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, X. We are all over the place. You can check us out on any podcast platform, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast. Make sure to go on there and give us a 5-star rating and review. Helps the show find new listeners. But the best way that you can help us find new listeners is to share us with your friends and family, especially those who love movies, TV shows, comics, and more. But if you want to get directly in there, if you want to get in and get involved,
close
in
and personal,
then you can join.
If you want to help expand Andrew's friend list,
I only got one apparently. then you can join our Discord.
What's that?
Oh, great question, Aaron.
Thank you.
Our Discord is it's an app that you can download on your phone and chat with us directly. We can talk about different movies, TV shows. We can stay up to date on current stuff. We are very, very active in there, especially nowadays. We do polls. We have people share their own original artwork, and we take episode topic suggestions in there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But how much does it cost though? Something that great has to be pretty expensive.
Surely.
Probably close to as much as Gladiator 2's production, right?
Of $250 million?
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually are running a sale.
That's what it should be. That's how much it should cost.
We are running a 100% off discount. It is completely free and always has been.
Woo, 100%, man. That's crazy. Yeah, it's always free. Has always been free. So click on the link in the description of this video if you want to join in on the Discord. It'll be great to have you. Thank you so much for watching this episode, and that's a wrap.